All right, so my name is Brian Anderson, and this is
Kris Kohlstedt.
And we're here to talk to you today about the function of a job and how you can organize your day-to-day in a way that keeps you sane and also feeling productive. Yeah?
Yep, mentally sane, focused, and productive.
You made a comment earlier that you thought you had an attention deficit.
Yeah.
And I tend to think that you just have yourself pulled in too many directions.
Is that a function of ADHD? Or is that a function of
You're setting me up.
my family familiar dynamics? I don't know.
You're setting me up. I know what you're doing. I think that attention troubles are very real in this Olympic economy, and that there are a lot of things that are constantly pulling people's attention away, oftentimes from that which is important and only to that which is urgent. So when you set up a business, to flip it back on you, when you set up a business in order to stay focused, how do you structure it so that you can minimize distractions and inattention?
I think first and foremost is focus on, I call it the main jam. That's income producing activities. And that anything that you're doing outside of that you're trying to organize until you're at maybe a certain level, I'm not sure. But anything outside of that is a distraction.
Explain that a little bit more.
So like if my business is selling homes, for me to go try to set up a system, organize a Google Drive and do all these things, that is not helping me sell homes. I need to go sell homes. And that should be my primary focus. Until I'm at a point where I'm like, I'm so overwhelmed from selling so many homes, my operations are awry. Let me hire some help to manage that.
Do you set things up at the very beginning with efficiency in mind?
I do. So there is strategic thought that goes into, okay, well, if I'm selling a home, like the natural progression of that, okay, there's a contract that has to be in place. Well, that contract has to go somewhere. Well, as I go and organize the contract, let's say, what I'm doing is I'm organizing it in a drive, but I'm also recording myself do that. I have a naming scheme, and I have now a video recording of how I've done that and set that up. So now for future reference, if I need someone else to do it, I say, hey, here's the naming scheme, here's the video, and here's the how-to.
So it kind of saves you that added time of having to give them a one-to-one tutorial. They just can view the video and know how to do the task itself.
Yeah, and the main purpose of that is so that I can stay on the main jam because my joy in business is more operations, visionary. I don't like being in the weeds all the time, but I find that that's what's required for me in this moment, so I'll do it.
Right, so being in the weeds, so you mean being overwhelmed with the minutia?
Yeah, so being the tactical guy, and so it's like in business you have like tactical and strategical. Tactical is the day-to-day operations. So like if I'm selling a home, direct to seller communication, title communication, inspector, appraiser, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Strategic would be, we want to set a vision for, okay, we want to sell 50 homes this year. How do we go about? Who do we need? What does our marketing budget need to be? How do we set all of those things up? And in that, there may be some research. There may be a network that I need to produce. So there's a lot of action that's driven inside of that I may not have because I'm in the day-to-day of, I need to go talk to Mr. Seller, or I need to talk to title. Instead of, hey, I'm focused on building my network. Now, for me, I'm doing both of those things.
Isn't it a bit unrealistic, though, to think that somebody on a smaller scale would only be responsible for one task instead of having to be responsible for many?
I think that is the challenge in business ownership. You have there's a time period of becoming the owner, if you so desire, which is why I think a lot of small businesses stay small.
They can't learn to balance the two.
Yeah, well, it takes it. To your point earlier about ADHD and you saying I'm just being pulled in too many directions, I believe that's a requirement to run and manage the style of business that I have, and to build the networks that I need, it takes time to get to a point where I can hire those positions out, because I also have to produce the revenue to, set myself up for that.
Right, and there's a bit of risk tolerance too, right? Because when you are starting to expand your staff pool, you're going to see a reduction in your revenue.
Reduction in revenue, maybe even increase in expenses. So to be balanced in that of, while revenue may be down, I've now hired someone. So now instead of me trading my time for that revenue, I'm now paying someone else to produce that revenue, which they may not in the first month or two.
Right. The big risk is that in the process of teaching them, then you're going to be down a little bit. You're going to hope they're going to be able to make that up when they come on full board.
Yeah.
And you'll have, more capacity and room to grow.
Yeah.
That's the small business angst right there, is as you need to grow, how much do you grow? How fast do you grow? How many resources do you allocate to that? And in the meantime, you have to be willing to fill in and plug all the holes.
Yeah. What I'm learning in that is, in addition to being tactical and strategical, you also have leadership and you have management. I'm finding that I enjoy leadership, but I have a lot of growing to do in the management department.
So, management. Yeah, I'm not a very good manager, I don't think, at times. Yeah, I don't think that I'm always very attentive to the individual needs of each person. I'm like you, I'm kind of like more thinking about what the long-term goal is.
Yeah.
And not that people are pawns, but people are sort of pawns. It's horrible to say. Because people aren't pawns, obviously. You have to care about them on an individual basis.
Yeah.
But I work hand in hand with my team.
Yeah.
Yours is a little bit distant at times, right? You have people elsewhere.
Yep. I think that there's leadership to make them not feel like pawns. So how I do it is, everyone has an ambition. We also have a business mission, and the idea is they have to tie their ambition for their life into our business mission. And in that builds trust with them to know that the work they do actually feeds into something greater, and that there is like the ability to grow, to take care of their family.
So you're attaching something spiritual to the mission almost.
Has to be existential. Otherwise, when times get tough, they will quit.
And that's what people flirt from job to job, don't they? Is they're ultimately kind of seeking that, why am I doing this? How does this satisfy a long-term goal? People will stay in an otherwise difficult job if they believe that there's a purpose and a mission to it.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that's kind of like the military is sort of like that. It's not an easy job, but you go into it almost exclusively because of a value system or a value set. And when you're trying to look for new hires, whether it be recruitment, the military, or recruitment for your personal business, you got to sell them on the existential.
Yeah.
You got to say, this is more than just helping me produce revenue. Yes, I make some money, you make some money. Hopefully you'll move beyond this position at some point in your life. I'd love for you to stay forever. But if you grow as a person, then you're going to outgrow the position.
Yeah.
So supporting them to that, and then it'll also keep you on your toes about innovating.
Yes, because I have to continue making them offers that are valuable for them to say, I can get behind this mission or vision continually. It's not hey, I told you the mission when we started, like you're expected to keep that in mind. It's got to be reinforced. I think that's leadership. I think management is, hey, you have these actions to take, like this is your job description. So how well you do or don't do your job, I have to manage to that. Like there's a standard that's set in the business of, let's say sales, for example, your requirement is 2 contracts a week, let's say. I have to manage to that. There may be lagging measures and leading measures, calls that you make, quality conversations you have, appointments you set, offers that are made, that kind of thing. So there's management to that. But I believe the leadership is when they don't hit those numbers, how do you address that?
So you're in the selling the real estate space. I am in the mental health space. Yet we both have a product.
Yeah.
And we both have people that we depend on to exercise that product, to implement it. And So when I have my staff trying to work with individuals or to stay in contact with referral sources, trying to help them see that, of course, you're making a direct impact on this person's life by being very, by holding yourself responsible and being paying attention to details. Because especially in my work with psychological evaluations, attention to detail is extremely important.
Yeah.
Whether it be getting back in touch with someone, a referral partner, forwarding on a report, making sure that you take your, phone calls correctly, that you can manage your emotions when someone's upset, So those are all very similar skills, maybe not for the same product, but they're all very similar skills to what you have to also, because you're on the phone sometimes with people who there's some resistance there.
Oh, every time.
So you have to kind of navigate that with them gently, keeping in mind that, you have an objective, but this is a human being on the other side, and the biggest asset they've probably ever owned, you're trying to figure out, a fair deal with them,
Yeah. What's interesting is, we're in business, but we're in human business, right? And that's you don't transact with the wall, you transact with other humans. And so there has to be careful thought and consideration to what concerns they have, because we have to be able to provide value to them in order for it to make sense. Like selling a home may be the biggest thing that someone does in their life, but we do that several times a month. It's like that's somewhat trivial to me now, but to someone else there's a lot of emotions. There's a family tied into it. There's so many things that go into that decision. So how do we navigate that conversation where we have to first determine, do you want to sell? And then, do I even have a product or a service that works for you? So I'm qualifying the human, and then who are they being? Like, what's the self they're being? If I qualify the self to be like they think they got it handled and they don't need me, perfect. I don't have an offer for them. Like, there's no point in me trying to convince them to sell. I have to let that go.
I'm going to interrupt you, because the interesting thing you just said is everything you could apply to your employees.
Yeah, exactly.
You have a product to sell them.
Yeah.
They're people, they have lives, they have things going on. Now, I know you were referring to individuals you don't know on the other side of a phone.
Right.
But the truth is, if you see sellers as just pawns, and if you're not looking to simultaneously lead and manage them on the phone, then you can run into some significant troubles, because they're not going to receive what you have to say well. If they think that you're just there to get one over on them, that you really truly don't value whatever they're going through in the moment, right? And the same goes with your employees.
Yeah.
So you say we're in the human business primarily. And when you can make that connection, now you have a path forward to where you can both have your mutual needs met.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's where my management can be poor at times when it comes to employees, is sometimes I may not have I feel the capacity to take the time out to address.
You believe you have the capacity to take the time?
Yeah, right. So yeah, I believe that. That's where I run into challenges.
So let's dissect that for a second. Can we do that?
Yeah.
So you believe that you don't have the capacity, or you do have the capacity?
Well, if I believe I don't, then I clearly don't. Like, I'm putting it out there that I don't.
Well, you mentioned something in the very beginning about family dynamics, right?
Yep.
And you've also shared in the past that your mother would sometimes speak for you, right?
Yes.
All right. So you believe you don't have the capacity to do something, yet here you are, clearly successful. You still hold on to this belief. Is it that you don't have the capacity, or is that belief such an organic idea that's rooted deeper into this period in which your mom always spoke for you and left with you the impression that your skill set was limited and you had to have others insert themselves for you? That's not to dispel your idea that you may be better at leadership than management. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that sometimes we have belief systems that stop us from exploring ideas or new skill sets, because it's uncomfortable. Now, you're not very well accustomed to the management scene. You don't enjoy it organically. And that's a fair statement, right? But you are a small business owner. I'm a small business owner. This is something I've had to learn how to realize is I'm responsible for management as much as I am for leadership.
Right.
So why am I not doing it?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting too, because too much leadership with no management won't produce results.
Right.
Too much management with no leadership is the exact same thing, right?
Chasing your tail.
Yeah. So there has to be that dynamic between the two. It's a harmony. It's a balance. It's a dance.
Yeah, it is. And so you get a lot of people that try and enter this space or your space or whatever individual space that they want to, starting up a new business, and they don't understand that there's a different skill set for different responsibilities, and that if they want to grow beyond being a team of one, then they're going to have to begin to develop this, right?
Yeah.
But the obstacles to developing are very much the same that I identified with you, that I've identified with myself, that even people in therapy sometimes struggle with. We're talking about business. They're talking about succeeding in their families. They're talking about succeeding at their jobs or their careers, right? So it's the mindset. It's the deep-rooted belief system that we have about ourselves that if we don't begin to really dig up and really critically examine, I tell myself this, but what evidence is there really for this? And there may be plenty of evidence. You know, they may critically examine it and say, no, I really am a crap manager. I really do need to just go and find some money and hire someone on, and because I really stink at this. I know a couple people like that. But anyway, point being is, I don't think that's the case for most people. I think most people are at least average on both, and that may just take their business only so far. Okay.
Right.
You know, you got to accept that. And some people are probably, you know, I think like yourself, probably better than what you give yourself credit for management. You know, I think that it's challenging and it's difficult and it's uncomfortable. And so you automatically assume in the face of difficulty, that you're not good at it.
Yeah. It's so funny to me. One of the things that being in business, and I think this is a great testament, like a microcosm for life, is that things don't go according to plan. Everything will break down. It's chaotic. It's messy. That's life. But to think anything other than that, like, oh, I developed this plan. It's all good, easy work. Like, it's going to go linear.
Yeah.
You know, to have that thought and belief, which I have had for quite some time, and I've had to dispel that just through my realities. I think it's hard to reconcile that life is difficult, and it's okay that it's difficult. It's like we want, and I think, you know, there's a lot of things that play into that, but I think we want things to be easier than they really are.
Well, we're constantly sold a bill of happiness.
Yeah.
You know, you see certain influencers in the real estate space get online and they say, it's as simple as this, do this. And they break it down into a program, or they break it down into a book. And then those who are eager to digest that, and rightfully so, these people are successful. They get into the nitty gritty of it, but they forget that the person building the program or writing the book, they sat there and they focused that effort. That is a condensed version, like a very concentrated version that is very methodically thought out and planned. Like recently you gave me that book on Alex Hormozi.
Yeah.
Right? And it's a great book. It is, you know, he's done tremendous things. And I have to remember as I'm reading it that I'm not where Alex Hormozi is at. He's concentrated his knowledge. He's wanting to share that. That's all fine. But I'm not Alex Hormozi. I don't have his life. I don't have his challenges. He doesn't have my challenges. So what can I take away from this person that is truly going to benefit me, and how can I leave the rest of it behind without continuously comparing myself to it? So when my business isn't as fluid as his, or not growing in leaps and bounds as his is, then that's not a failure on my part. It's more like what you said. Life is chaotic.
Yeah.
Life is tough.
It is.
You know? It's almost like an acceptance that my pace is going to be different than your pace.
Yeah.
And that's okay. You know, at least I have some pace.
Yeah. What's interesting is like the idea of, like, let's say Alex, his idea is to impress upon you a concept of, let's say, marketing, or sales. But what actually hits home with most people is Alex is further than I am. Alex is so much smarter than me. It's
Right.
like that comparison game.
Yeah.
So you miss the real reason that he wrote the book, because you're in your own comparison.
Right.
And I think, like, as a testament to the work that I do personally on myself, is to remove that charge of, man, that's just not my story, and that's okay.
Right.
That works for him. My story works for me, and I'm okay with my path of progress. And until I have that acceptance, life is going to be very challenging. Instead, like, I can't allow the flow of life because I'm constantly saying it should be different,
right,
than what it is.
And so, I guess the psychological or the therapeutic equivalent would be, everyone wants the influence of Jordan Peterson, or they want the influence of Dr. Phil, or every research professor wants the influence of Albert Beck, or they want the influence of Albert Ellis, or they want the influence of Beck, or they want the influence of Freud. I mean, that's probably a little lofty, but we read these people in the literature and we're like, man, this is great. They have such a profound influence, and then you go and you see 5 people a day, and you're kind of like, I'm not making any traction in people's lives, and that's discouraging. But to your point, you have what you have. What are you going to do with it? You cannot begin to prepare yourself for something more if you can't yet manage what's directly in front of you. You can't.
It's good. I mean, and a lot of that, so getting clear on that, I have these periods of time where I have to do that self-check and see, like, get clear on what it is that I'm managing. And I can quickly see, to full circle what you brought up in the beginning is maybe I have too much going on. I have to take into account, like, what all I do have going on. And just a little blip of an example of that is, like, each property that we flip, and sell, we have to get utilities put in our name. Mm-hmm. And in the wanting to do more, and maybe in the comparison, I failed to properly manage the utility piece. So I had someone on that who was managing it, and I learned that there are some nuances with utilities, particularly gas, that I didn't take care of. Now, as a result of that, I have 7 accounts with the gas company. 2 of them are in my business name, but 5 of them are in my personal name. And there's like I think there's 14 total past due accounts. And I had no idea that any of them were past due until I spent 3 hours on the phone to unravel and manage where I'm at.
Wow.
So the downfall to that is now I'm personally liable for those expenses. And if I don't pay them, that's a ding on my credit as a collection. So you set these homes up under your name, and when the residents moved in or didn't pay the bill because it was set up under your name, you're now okay. I gotcha. Wow, that's a kick between the legs there, right? Yeah.
All right. So to kind of wrap all this up a little bit, we talked about attention troubles. We talked about being pulled in multiple directions. We talked about leadership and management, the differences between them, how small businesses often have to juggle the two. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, the framework we tried to talk about that within is this idea that we sometimes have self-limiting beliefs that can be very deeply rooted in prior experiences, and that we have to hold ourselves accountable instead of always contrasting ourselves against other people. And then we're going to make mistakes along the way.
Yeah.
Sometimes as profound as having 14 different gas accounts. But anyway, sorry.
Sometimes that's what it takes.
That's what it takes. And then you sort it out after 3 hours and you're like, well, I won't do that again.
Yeah. Like, lesson learned, Yeah. And that's the messiness of life. It's like, man, I thought I had that handled. I had someone on it.
And there's 2 directions you could go with that, right? I'm unprepared. I'm not as good. Look at these other guys. They're successful. They're not making stupid mistakes. Or you can be like, okay, great. Another feather in my cap. This is one step closer. The next time I mentor someone, I'm going to give them this piece of advice. They're going to be like, oh my God, you're a genius. This is amazing. And you're going to think, yeah, but there are battle scars from that.
Yeah. And that's the messiness of life that I believe we all go through. And it's just like the perception of that. So as soon as I saw that, I'm like, I got to take responsibility for this. Like, that's on me. I thought I had it handled, And I was actually, it's kind of funny. I was reflecting. I was in my ego a little bit about it. Oh, I got it handled. It's automated. It's no problem. Someone's on it. Nah, nope. You know, that's part of the messiness of life, and that's okay. And to your point, like, yeah, I battle scars now, and that helps me understand what's required in that situation now.
Well, you got to start somewhere to go someplace.
Yeah. But if it don't start, then I'd never know that that's even a situation to deal with.
All right. So development of both leadership and management of both your employees as well as your the people you're selling products to.
And self.
Yeah. Well, that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah.
All right, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right, dude.